In this video, yes, Karen, I went on a holiday thousands of kilometers away to traumatize your kids and infest the ocean. Half-sister claimed she had no other dress to wear but her own wedding dress. And my teacher called my work bad and my attitude even worse. It then got featured in the biggest art gallery in the country. Yes, Karen, I went on a holiday thousands of kilometers away to traumatize your kids and infest the ocean. It has caused me horrible years full of bullying, severe mental issues, and, well, I've mostly gotten out of it by early 2018. Mostly. I still kind of have a bit of it in me. I always will. Definitely as long as people like this walk on this planet. I won't specify the country nor exact time. As well, keep in mind that it happened in 2018, so something might not reflect how it exactly was, and I'll be paraphrasing a bit. I first saw Karen while waiting to board a plane. However, I didn't interact with her until a refueling stop, some 5 to 6 hours later. Why, you might ask? The flight departed between midnight and 1 a.m., so obviously we flew in the dark, and most people were asleep, or were trying. We landed during daybreak. We weren't allowed to leave the plane. I was sitting, playing something on a tablet. Siblings seated with me were miraculously asleep. Gosh, how I envied them. When Karen and 2 kids walked by to use the lavatory. Karen. Karen. D. Karen's daughter. S. Karen's son. S. Look, Mom, what happened to her? Karen. Something about me being insolent for looking like that. D. Let's go, Mom. Then they're coming back. Karen. Ahem. You seem to attract a lot of attention to how you look. Me. Please, ma'am, keep it down. I don't want to wake them up. Karen. Sure. Just don't exhibit yourself like this. You're scaring my children. I was wearing a short-sleeved t-shirt and shorts. Yes, on a plane. Like I'm not entering 40-degree heat in a hoodie and jeans, and definitely not changing in the tiny lavatory. M. My mom, across the aisle. Is there a problem? Karen. If you're the mother, tell her to cover up. M. You're not to tell me how to raise my daughter. Now please, get back to your seat and leave us alone, or I'm calling the flight attendant. Karen stomped off with her kids. 5 to 6 hours later, my destination. After going through the passport, visa, baggage stuff, and other stuff like that, we were headed to the bus, which was to take us to a hotel. And guess who was at the same bus? Yes, Karen. However, she didn't cause any scenes. After 3 to 5 hours of riding on roads, which appeared to be made mostly of holes, dirt, and giant speed bumps, we finally reached our hotel. And who left the bus as well? If you guessed Karen and her family, you're correct. Great. I haven't seen neither of Karen's family very much, other than knowing that my little siblings, brother 4 and sister 6, have fallen quite well with Karen's kids. Skip forward a few days. I went with my siblings in the sea. We obviously were in a very shallow water. After some time, D and S came as well, and the 5 of us began playing and goofing around. D and S could have been like 7 or 8. D and S didn't seem bothered at all by how I looked. And then along came Karen. With almost no people near, she saw it as a chance to remind me of the past years. Karen, what are you doing there with my kids? Me. Nothing, ma'am. We were just playing here. Is it wrong? Karen, yes, it's wrong. Look at yourself. They will have nightmares of you, and you're contaminating the ocean. Me. They don't seem bothered about me, and it's not contagious. Karen, I don't care. People like you should not go on holidays. You should have stayed at home. I sent my siblings to get my parents, who were at the bar. Me. Please, ma'am, leave me alone. I'm not happy with it either. Please, just leave me alone. Karen. Then get the fuck out of here. How can you walk around in that, a 2-piece, with how disgusting it looks? Me. Now in tears. Please, go away. I don't like it either. I just want to be left alone, and I won't bother you. Karen, no. Not until I talk to those who thought that bringing a freak of nature here to cause offense is a good idea. I, in tears, ran off, past my parents, who were now headed to confront Karen. I, however, stopped to take the key for our room and ran off to our room, where I broke down. My parents and Karen then got into an argument which attracted quite a lot of attention. I'm keeping the rest for myself, for the sake of not sounding too familiar to someone and to keep this short. D and S weren't allowed to play with my siblings. However, I didn't get any more shit from Karen, and her husband apologized profusely when he met me by the pool the evening before our flight home. Karen never told me anything on the way home, neither did the rest of her family. Today, much bigger part of my body is affected, yet I've never felt better about how I look. Half-sister claims she had no other dress to wear, but her own wedding dress. The cast: John, my brother; Jane, my sister-in-law; Susan, my half-sister; me. Back in 2016, my brother announced that he and his girlfriend of many years were engaged and were planning on having a wedding the following year. They gave 9 months notice, at least, to people who would be invited, also told what the color theme for the wedding would be: purple. In that time, between the announcement and the wedding date, I was easily able to order a dress from an online retailer in London, have it sent to me, and still had time to replace if I needed, but I didn't. 2017 comes and the wedding weekend has arrived. I live in a different state to my brother, as my mom and I moved from our hometown back in 2013, so we both had to travel across the ocean back to the mainland to attend the wedding. The wedding was absolutely gorgeous. Sunny day, on the beach. I couldn't help but cry because my work of a brother was actually marrying the mother of his children and love of his life. He had never seemed happier. John and Jane had 3 kids together already, and the older 2 were flower girls, which was sweet. Now, John is technically only my half-brother. We share a mom, but not a dad, yet growing up, it was my dad who raised John, so to him, my dad was his dad. My dad, prior to marrying my mom, had a first wife and a couple kids with that wife, including Susan. John and I have always had some issues with Susan. She was only my half-sister, not John's, but he still included her in the wedding and such as a family member and guest. I hadn't noticed at the time as I was too caught up in the whirlwind of my brother's wedding ceremony, but Susan wasn't wearing purple. No, she was wearing white. To be specific, she was wearing her white wedding dress to someone else's wedding. John and Jane were pissed, especially Jane. Cue reception. Some people have changed clothes. It was my first ever wedding, so I didn't think that far ahead and still wore my soft lilac dress without a problem while everyone ate and shared some drinks, interacted with the bride and groom, what I assumed to be normal wedding things. But Susan. Oh, Susan. She was feeling extremely sad and lonely because no one was paying attention to her. The 30-plus-year-old woman who wore her wedding dress to someone else's wedding. I wonder why no one wanted to interact with her. Susan began crying maybe halfway through reception, openly, loudly, and in a way that clearly begged for someone to come notice her. I'm a nice person, so I try to be the good half-sister I should be and bit the bullet to go sit with her for a little while. Ask her what's wrong. Susan: no one is paying attention to me. Me, while staring at her, confused a little. What do you mean? Susan: everyone is talking with John and Jane, but no one is talking to me. And when I try to speak with John and Jane, they don't talk to me. I sighed internally and couldn't help but wonder how she didn't connect the dots. Me: Susan, it's their wedding. Of course everyone is going to be talking to them and they're going to be busy. Susan: I don't care. I'm John's sister, so he should talk with me more. Actually, lady, you're not his sister. I am. But okay, whatever. I was able to slip away and spend some time with some other family who weren't acting as if this day was all about them. After the ceremony, Jane admitted to me she was livid about how Susan wore the wedding dress. She had plenty of time to plan for the wedding and get appropriate attire, but when finally confronted, Susan said she had no other dress she could wear. This is perhaps a boring tale to most, but even nearly 4 years later, I'm still pissed at my half-sister for doing that. My mom, John, and Jane are also pissed about it still. I've since cut contact with Susan. Her and I never had a good bond anyway, and as far as I could see it, it, we just shared a dad, but I almost never had to deal with my dad's previous family. As far as I know, John and Jane have limited contact with her, but that can't be helped as they live in the same city as her now, while I happily live in a place where an ocean is between me and her. My teacher called my work bad and my attitude even worse. It then got featured in the biggest art gallery in the country. Context: the school I go to is well respected in my country, so it was not uncommon for venues to request to display a student's work or to ask for students to sing live for them. On the occasion in question, the largest art gallery in the country had asked my school to submit inspired art to be out on display. The school agreed and said that they would submit 5 pieces of work, 1 piece per year, for years 9 to 13. Backstory: I hated art growing up, but it was a mandatory subject until you got to choose your subjects in year 10. Needless to say, I dropped the subject ASAP. Despite hating the subject, I still put effort into my work and some of it wasn't that bad. However, at the same time, I would not hide away from expressing my views when we were given a task that I didn't see a point to, even if the teacher was in earshot. Needless to say, my relationship with the art department faculty wasn't the best. My teacher at the point particularly had it in for me. He was one of those teachers that has the view that their subject should be your most important subject, regardless of your future ambitions. If he thought that you weren't prioritizing art, then he would make your life hell. Yet again, I hated art as a subject. He knew this, but I would still do any work set to the best of my ability. We had just finished a project where we had to mix different pigments to create our own unique color. Being colorblind, I struggled a lot as I literally could not differentiate between half of the pigments. I gave it my all but ended up giving up halfway through the project. My teacher hated me for giving up. In his defense, he had tried to make it as easy as possible for me, but I hated the subject and saw a way out, so I took it. My teacher was beyond mad. When we went to hand the project in, he gave me a lecture about how I need to put in effort, more effort, and work harder because of the quality of work was unacceptable. Remember, I literally couldn't see half of the project. Once that project was finished, my teacher told us that Gallery X has asked that we create some inspired art. We were basically shown 5 different paintings that we were supposed to recreate in our own way. There was a big fuss about this. People were saying that art schools would be giving out scholarships, that there was a $10,000 reward, and other nonsense that 14-year-olds make up. But nevertheless, everyone wanted to be the one having their painting in Gallery X. So for the next month and a half in my art classes, we would work on our piece. After the first week of working on my piece, the excitement of the new project wore off, and so did my eagerness in lessons. My teacher noticed this and went from complimenting my work to yelling at me about what I was doing wrong. By the 4th week, I was over the project and just wanted to be done with this. With 2 weeks left on the project, my teacher pulls me aside to tell me that my work isn't good enough and I need to improve it. I tried to improve, but he kept on belittling me. So out of arrogance and spite, I made art my most important subject until the end of this project. I dragged myself to each lesson, quietly working myself to the bone, counting down the days until the deadline of the project. After what seemed like a year to 14-year-old me, the second last lesson arrives. The lesson was not for final touches or anything like that. My teacher had decided that he should review what each student has done well and where they could have improved. He walks around the classroom complimenting everyone's work until he gets to mine. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I'm pretty sure none of it was positive. I do remember, however, how he finished talking about mine. You can tell that he hasn't given this any thought and hasn't taken this seriously. That stung like a bitch because, yes, I had lost interest in it, but I had still worked hard in lessons and given it my best shot. The bell then went and I sulked out of my class with my tail between my legs. The last lesson finally comes and I can't wait to be over with this stupid project. This lesson was the big one too. The judges from Gallery X were coming to school to judge all of the work. They come into our class, do all the formalities. These all look so good. I have no idea how we can decide on only one, etc. Then they start walking around the room, muttering to each other. The whole class is stood silently at the back trying to hear what they're saying. They do a full lap of the room, then walk back over to my spot. I don't even notice this as I had tuned out after they had looked at the second painting. They then asked the teacher whose work they are stood over. He looks at them almost in disbelief as he gestures to me. I snap out of my daydream and just smile politely with no idea what's going on. The judges then confer for a whilst my teacher and I frantically try to figure out what's going on. Finally, after about 5 minutes of mumbling, they say that they want to shortlist it to potentially be shown in Gallery X. I look at them in shock, then yet again smile politely and say thank you. I can't begin to describe the look on my teacher's face. I don't think I've ever seen someone more confused, angry, and disappointed all at the same time. My teacher then begrudgingly thanks the judges and walks them to the door. He thanks them again as they leave, then stumbles back to the class. He doesn't even congratulate me on my work. He just defeatedly says, "Good work, everyone. As a reward, I'll put on a documentary for you all to watch." And he did just that, not saying another thing until the end of class. Later on that week, I got an email from Gallery X asking for my permission to display my work, of which I happily said yes to. To sum it up, the work that he disrespected and said that I put no effort into was selected from 192 others, got featured in the biggest art gallery in the country.